Alright boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about some of the campaigns of Total War Warhammer 3 that are really worth playing in 2026. Now, these aren't necessarily the flashiest campaigns or the ones that generally make the top 5 list of best campaigns in the game. That's its own discussion. But I think these campaigns are certainly interesting enough that they are absolutely worth checking out, even if only once. And at number 5, we start with Alith Anar of the High Elves. Though saying that he's a High Elven Legendary Lord is being a bit generous. The general determination of Alith Anar is that he's kinda a crossbreed of a Skaven and a Khorne campaign. Skaven because he has stock stats and the underway ability, and he's got a real focus on skirmisher units or ranged units, ambushing, and just range combat capability in general, sneaky, stealthy assassination types. He also has a bunch of assassination missions in his campaign that give him significant benefits, and a unique hero dedicated to assassinating his opponents. So for instance, when you start a campaign, and you might want to start the campaign several times in order to get the right objectives, because it is randomized, that's a bit of the downside. But when you start your campaign, you will have a bunch of different characters to go for, and every 20 turns, or whenever you eliminate these characters, you will get more missions. And these missions give you a lot of money, influence, as well as different benefits that you can utilize in your campaign. Sometimes it's just money and influence, other times it's things like diplomatic relations, fear when fighting Dark Elves, upkeep for all armies, or things like growth, if I'm not mistaken on that subject. And which means that this entire campaign situation is fairly interesting and can create a very dynamic and fun campaign. Now, the reason I mentioned he's kinda a Khorne Legendary Lord is because he's got no rest for the wicked. He replenishes his campaign movement range 15% after winning a battle. Yes, the unholy child of, I guess, ancient Khorne, or the horned rat in Khorne. Yeah, it's a really, really weird situation with Alith Anar, but he works. I think it's one of the more entertaining High Elven campaigns in the game at the moment. And after Tides of Torment, Creative Assembly improved him by quite a bit by giving him both Temperate Climate and Temperate Island, which he didn't have before. That was always kind of the problem with him because he only had Frozen and Wasteland, so his campaign was limited. Now it's no longer so limited, and that makes this a fantastic campaign to play. At number 4, we have Vlad and Isabella von Karstein of the Vampire Counts. The Vampire Counts are in a weird spot as a race. On one hand, they've only ever gotten one DLC, as well as some side benefits from the Vampire Coast race pack. But on the flip side, they do work very well within the context of Warhammer 3, be it diplomacy, unit recruitment, economy, it just functions. Now, the great thing about Vlad and Isabella is you kind of have a 2 Legendary Lord package in one. Sure, the faction effects do vary, especially Isabella having a lot of hero capacity for vampires, weapon strength for embedded vampire heroes, and all the kind of benefits that come from that. But on top of that, you have two lords. One is going to be a legendary hero, one's going to be the legendary lord. Vlad is always the faction leader. But the huge benefit from this is you have both of their special skill lines available in your campaign. The one that is the legendary hero also starts with their items unlocked, which this is one of the reasons you make Vlad the legendary hero, is because Blood Drinker and the Karstein Ring are ridiculously powerful. But then you consider the kind of benefits you do acquire through this. So for instance, you get Curse of Undeath, which gives you unit experience gain per turn for armies in local province, and faction-wide, plus a 150 for all armies faction-wide. That is a ridiculous level of power. You get diplomatic relations with the Empire, so actual diplomatic victory with the Empire, except with the exception of Karl France, who you need to wipe out in order to achieve your short and long campaign victory conditions, especially long. Short, you just need to take Altdorf, but long, you need to actually wipe out Reichland. Yeah, some of those victory conditions could be updated, but that is ridiculously powerful and great, and both of them are pretty scary and powerful in combat. Then you have Isabella. She gets pure capacity of vampires, a bunch of benefits for different units, things like you look at direwolves, you look at Feldbats, Vargulds, Vargeists, Terrorgeists. That is a ridiculous level of power. Armor piercing, passive ability Hunger, which replenishes HP. It is ridiculously good. It is awesome. You can dominate through a military perspective. You can dominate through diplomacy. You can do both. One of the things I actually like to do in this campaign is, yeah, I do fight a couple of battles here, but then I rush for Grand Peak, take it before Ungrim, build a barracks, and then sell it to Ungrim, and I get him as a vassal. Seriously. The diplomacy capability of this campaign is ridiculous. We will reunite the realm of the dwarves by making them the vassals of the vampire counts. It is perhaps a bit ridiculous in terms of diplomacy, but it does work, and it is freaking hilarious to do so. Sure, you might want to wait with the Lords of End Times for whatever improvements Creative Assembly bring with it, though maybe, given their track record with Tides of Torment, they will actually end up ruining things, seeing what they've done recently. But at the same time, you may want to wait, but even at right now, this is a really fun and entertaining campaign to enjoy as is. And of course, you do also have the blood kisses, the bloodlines, the various benefits of the vampire counts. Like, I would not care too much about Von Karstein or Strigoi, but I would definitely go for Blood Dragons, Lamians, because you get plus 30 diplomatic relations with Lamians, and yes, it does stack with Vlad's benefit. Blood Dragons, extra unit experience gained per turn and weapons for cavalry units, and then Raise Dead pull capacity. Raise Dead is one of those awesome mechanics for the vampire counts because you can essentially unlock the entire unit roster of vampire counts just for Raise Dead. Recruitment structures are more of a secondary benefit for vampire counts, and maybe Warriors of Chaos could have taken some notes from this. Raise Dead is the primary means of recruiting units. Recruiting units through regular structure, sure, you go for it eventually, but it's more of a long-term benefit and side benefit than anything else. So, overall, great package, really great characters, and who doesn't like Vlad, after all? At number 3, we have Boris Ursus of Kislev, who I consider to be the proper Kislev experience. You go fight demons of Chaos and Archeon and many other people in the Chaos Wastes. You get supporters with both the Orthodoxy and the Ice Court doing so, which is a fairly substantial advantage. You have a good amount of faction effects over here. Diplomatic relations with Katrin, campaign movement range, construction costs for garrison buildings and religious buildings, and then construction time for provincial capital settlement buildings, which is a pretty big deal. On top of that, you have a bunch more benefits through special skill line fighting against Chaos, or just conquering the map in general, including reseller, growth to all provinces, no colonization cost, faction-wide. You also have a unique commandment that gives you further levels of devotion control in your province. And because of all the supporters that you are getting in a campaign, you can get spiritual conquests reasonably quickly, which gives you 100 devotion for newly captured settlements in Chaos Wasteland climates. Now, a high level of devotion, what it does if we just conquered the settlement here, what it will do is it will nullify the climate penalties in a specific province. And keep in mind that unlike many other campaigns, for you, Chaotic Wasteland already gives you extra devotion, and it's unpleasant as opposed to uninhabitable. But when you nullify those climate penalties through a high level of devotion, or getting an Ataman, or some other ways of doing so, you end up in a pretty powerful position. You also have a very strong starting army. You have a casualty replenishment hero that buffs your units, you have Tsar Guard, you have Armor Kossars, you have Warbear Riders, and Boris himself, who also has 2 items that you can gain very quickly, and the objectives for doing so also give you quite a bit of money. So there's a lot of possibilities in this campaign be it climate potential, supporters, army situation, faction effects, lord effects, just really an overall great legendary lord. A lot of people are put off from playing Boris because he starts with no settlement, he's close to Archaon, but that's actually a benefit because you can eliminate Archaon and even Arbol before they become too big of a threat. We have Skarsnik, the true warlord of Carrick 8 Peaks. Now, Skarsnik's always been in a weird position ever since he was added in Warhammer 1. He's a master strategist who never felt like a master strategist until Omens of Destruction, because they gave him stock stance to his own army. So all the kind of Night Goblin benefits and ambushing benefits that Skarsnik does have in his skill line suddenly ended up being worthwhile in a campaign by quite a bit. Like, armor piercing during ambushes, leadership during ambushes, death juices, ambusher, all these kind of things ended up being far more useful. But on top of that, what they also changed is that when you capture Carrick 8 Peaks, you don't just get stock stands for one army, you get stock stands for every single army in your campaign. So, yes, you're basically playing the greenskin equivalent of the Skaven without being Skaven. And you also can now recruit orc units from every settlement once you get Carrick 8 Peaks, whereas before Omens of Destruction, you could only recruit them from there through a structure that took a very, very long time. So the Green Tide is very much relevant for Skarsnik. Master Ambusher, Master Strategist, has a landmark focused on squigs, which in itself is a pretty big benefit, because getting colossal squigs can be pretty damn scary in a campaign. So tons of benefits across the board for Skarsnik. His ability of confederating Gorbad, who has a very good skill line, not necessarily a great campaign, but a really, really good skill line, and is pretty interesting himself in battle and in campaign as a lord. Now, again, not as a campaign, but as a lord, does elevate this entire campaign experience by quite a bit. That's why I'd recommend playing Skarsnik. Might not be for everyone, but certainly is a unique experience. Finally, at number 1, we have Morathi of the Dark Elves. Now, Lokir is obviously the best Dark Elven campaign in the game, but Lokir is more about raiding and pillaging and sacking across the campaign map and getting a ton of money through those black arcs. Morathi is more of a traditional campaign of building an empire, and oh boy is she good at it. No joke. Dark Elves have instant construction through all the slaves they acquire. They have good growth through slave drive. So they have a ton of benefits in terms of building an empire. And on top of that, diplomacy-wise, while a lot of different factions do dislike them, it's not such a level of aversion that you can't manage it diplomatically. Like, you want to ally Mazdamundi, you can do so. You want to ally Chaos, you can do so. You want to ally basically any faction in the game except High Elves, you can do so. The High Elves are the exception because they have 100 level of aversion, and you can even deal with that eventually if you really want to. Though, do you really care for it? That's its own discussion. But again, you can do so. On top of that, Morathi has Slaaneshi corruption in her provinces, so she gets an economic benefit and a control benefit in her campaign as well. She also has a unique building chain for all of her settlements that gives her both Death Hags and Druchii Anointed. So if you have purchased Tides of Torment, the Slaaneshi part, you will be able to get Druchii Anointed in Morathi's campaign. And also, you will be able to get Devotees of Slaanesh, both the melee version and the crossbow version. It's just some extra units for Dark Elves, not especially the best units in the world, but the combination of Exalted Demonettes of Slaanesh plus Druchii, Devotees of Slaanesh, Druchii ones, that is a fairly powerful combination. Furthermore, she's a pretty powerful caster, pretty solid in melee as well, surprisingly. So she gets Sorceress recruitment across all provinces, Sorceress capacity, and a skill line choice that can be pretty ridiculous in certain ways. Like, Insidious, maybe not so much, though, again, it can be pretty useful. But you can also look at Tenacious. All armies, more post-battle casualties captured, so more slaves, income post-battle loot, pretty important for Dark Elves, unit experience, casualty replenishment, is a traditional campaign. It's not as crazy as some of the other campaigns on this list in terms of unique mechanics, but it works really, really well for what it is. That's all I had to say. Christine signing out. I'll see you on the next one.